What's up, everybody? Welcome to another episode here of the Cherry Pickers. We're on episode 10. Gary Altuzer here with Jim Bailey, getting ready for this conference championship Sunday. Can't believe it's here, Jim. We only got one more week of football after this. One more game to go after today. The Super Bowl coming up in 2 weeks from now. Hard to believe it's here, but we're back again. We're going to stick with you until the end of the NFL season before we transition into some other things after that. But today we're talking about all things conference championship, NFC, 49ers and Lions, AFC, Ravens and Chiefs. But before we get to those things, we're going to touch base on some other stuff that's happening in the NFL. Why don't we start with this coaching carousel that we're seeing, these coaching changes, Jim? We've got 4 of them to talk about today. Only one of them is a somewhat local team, and that's the Cincinnati Bengals lost their offensive coordinator, one that has to do with a local team, I should say, as Brian Callahan is headed to the Tennessee Titans. You as a Steelers fan, you see the Bengals a couple times a year. You watch them. What do you think that guy can bring to the table to Tennessee?
Yeah, it kind of fits the mold of people looking for young offensive minds. He wasn't really he was the offensive coordinator, but the head coach in Cincinnati is usually the main guy. It's always hard to kind of judge those guys who have the title of offensive coordinator, but they aren't the true offensive coordinator. We saw it with like Eric Bieniemy in Kansas City for years. So these kind of guys do get their chance eventually, but it's hard to know how much they're going to really do or how much involvement in the offense they had previously. So not surprised with it, though. We saw that hire is young offense. Carolina was kind of a surprise hire where they went with the Tampa Bay offensive coordinator, Dave Canales. So just see it so often where they're just going for the offensive side of the ball, specifically young, passing up on a guy like Belichick. It's really surprising to me that Belichick's still out there. Surprising in a way, I guess, but with him, you kind of wonder like how much of it is he wants control of a franchise, wants to be able to run the GM part of the things. Atlanta seemed like they were in on him, had a couple interviews with him, passed on him, went with Raheem Morris. So yeah, a lot of it with him is like how much control does he want, but still kind of surprising that someone with his pedigree is still out there. You're on mute.
It is kind of surprising the guy's considered the greatest coach of all time until really this year is when you've started to hear the rumblings that the guy's not as good as advertised. But I have to imagine that him wanting control has something to do with it. And I heard a podcast the other day that said, when they're interviewing, they're probably saying really interested on the offensive side of the ball, what he plans to do. Because let's be honest, his offenses have stunk the last couple years. And they said he probably started mentioning guys that had coached for him in the past. And, if you're mentioning a guy that just got fired by the Raiders to come in and run that offense without Tom Brady or some of these other guys that have coached with him forever, that doesn't invoke a lot of excitement. And you want all the control, and then you're going to bring in these guys who have been around the league forever and haven't shown much real success outside of being with you and Tom Brady. It's tough to mortgage your entire franchise on a guy who wants to do stuff like that, and he wants to control every single part of the franchise, the draft, everything. And the guy stinks at drafting talented offensive skill players. Let's be honest. I mean, those offensive skill players that they got, I think Julian Edelman is the only one that he drafted that turned out to be anything really, really good outside of Gronk, I guess. We're talking receivers here. He was the only one. A lot of those other receivers that they had success with were free agents that were brought in. And even with Edelman, I think it took him 4 years before he got any kind of a regular role in that offense.
Yeah, I mean, he was a project. He was a later round pick that was converted from quarterback in college, so he was just a total project. I mean, give him props for developing. But I was listening to some of the pregame shows earlier, and Teddy Bruschi was on there. He said, they were like, well, what's Belichick's record without Brady versus with him? And of course, without Brady, even back when he was with Cleveland, not good. I think it's below 500 by far when he doesn't have Brady. But his point was, well, he drafted Brady. He developed Brady. He's part of what Brady is, which is probably true to a point. But at the same time, even Brady was a project in himself, being a 6th-round pick. So, I mean, personally, I could see why teams are going to be a little bit hesitant to hire him with his age, with what he's done these last few years. I mean, I think as soon as Brady left, if he would have went to another team, still coming off the hot streak in New England, he'd have got any job in the league. You know, it's the shine has just come off with these last few years of, like you said, just especially offensive futility.
Yeah, for sure. And I mean, they don't have the roster in New England. They didn't have the roster to do anything. He didn't build anything around Mac Jones at all. Their offensive line stunk. And then who was the best guy they had to go to him? I mean, really, was it of these past few years? Who was the best receiver he had? Is Schuster there? Is Juju?
Yeah,
I mean, there was nobody, nothing. So that doesn't invoke a lot of confidence, and it's kind of crazy. The guy's going to be unemployed. I don't think he'd ever take a defensive coordinator role. I couldn't see him not being the boss.
No way.
That would be, you know, anything that at least the guy that we know, the NFL junkies that we know who he was and how he was with the team. So, I mean, maybe he'll take a year off, might do him some good to get a break and maybe reevaluate things and then try to come in next year. But Callahan's headed to Tennessee. That Tennessee team, we still can't believe that they got rid of the guy that was there, a guy who done a lot of good things. I mean, it's still really a shock that he's not there anymore. But they're going to go with Brian Callahan. Canales is headed to Carolina. That's actually a good hire for them, if you ask me, because he did a lot of good things with Tampa. I saw some of the things that were broke. I watched something that broke down a lot of things that happened this year with that Tampa offense and how he really did a lot of really creative things, and he's moved his way up. That's a great hire there. Atlanta has a great roster, really, really good roster outside the quarterback position, and they went with a guy who has been an NFL head coach in the past, about a decade ago, Raheem Morris. He was with Tampa. His first year, he went 10-6, and then after that, they were a dumpster fire. But I was shocked when I first heard it because he didn't really do a great job in Tampa. He went 10-6 one year, but they didn't really. They just beat some bad teams and won a couple close games. But everybody former players that I heard, analysts that had guys that had covered the Rams or the Buccaneers or the teams that he had coached with, say that he's like a favorite in the locker room and that he does a lot of good things. Raheem Morris going to Atlanta with a good roster. I guess he's got a really good reputation around the league. I didn't realize it, but he was in Atlanta for, I think, their Super Bowl run that they were on. Yep. So I guess it's kind of a natural fit.
Yeah, from what I heard, and we were kind of surprised that that's the way they went, but hearing about it, seemed like he was in kind of high demand. He could have had his pick of a couple different jobs. So he's done a real good job with the Rams defense. Not really a sexy hire, not too exciting, but guy's been around for a while. You'd think, again, with all these offensive coaches going that way, surprised me a little bit. About Harbaugh, your guy Harbaugh back in L.A., we haven't talked about that yet. I mean, coming from Michigan, fresh off the championship, not surprised to see him move on to the NFL like every single year. There's been rumblings about, is he going to move to the NFL? Is he going to stay at Michigan? Like literally every single offseason. So it seemed like it was just a matter of time. Now that he's won the championship, kind of accomplished what he wanted to at Michigan, has the penalties possibly coming from the NCAA. So it seemed like a good time for him to jump ship. I know you've always been a big fan of him from his San Francisco days. What do you like about him as a head coach?
The thing about Jim Harbaugh is that he is just a coach. I mean, I don't know how else to put it to make it kind of – I don't know how to say it without saying that he's just good at coaching. He's good at everything. He came in, I'm a 49ers fan. So he came in after he was at Stanford. He developed Andrew Luck. And he came into a team that won 5 games that season with Mike Singletary. And me and every other 49ers fan that was around at that time had been telling people for years that this roster is really good, that Alex Smith is a good quarterback. But you got Mike Singletary, who was coaching after Mike Nolan, 2 guys who were focused on defense and had no clue what they were doing with an offense and had no clue how to get a locker room to follow them. Mike Singletary's offensive coordinator at the time. His name was Jimmy Ray, and the guy literally thought it was the 1950s when he called his offense. He would bring in a backup running back, and every time that backup running back came in the game, they ran the ball. Everybody on the 49ers message board said, here we go. We're subbing out Frank Gore. There's a run. If a bunch of schmucks like me know what play's coming, what do you think these NFL defensive coordinators are going to know? And Jimmy Ray and Mike Singletary told Alex Smith that a sack was just as bad as a turnover. That's how they coached him. If you get sacked, it's like throwing an interception. So there were a lot of games where he was starting to get sacked and he would just throw the ball up in the air or try to make something happen. And everybody's like, what's happening? Why is he doing stupid stuff like this? Well, it wasn't until later after Harbaugh got there, he revealed, I was coached to not take a sack under any circumstances. And I was coached to do this and to do that. And we called basic plays and we had no deception. So when Harbaugh came in, they won 5 games with Singletary. They won their last game of the year. They actually went 6-10. Jim Tomsula took over that last game. That last game they played the Cardinals. Alex Smith had like 2 50-yard touchdowns, which he hadn't had in, I don't think, ever in his career until then. And all he had to do was take the reins away from these 2 knuckleheads that were head coaches. And he threw, I think it was Teddy Guinea, threw 2 long touchdowns in that game. And everybody's like, wow, where the heck was this the rest of the season? And then Harbaugh comes in, changes everything. Harbaugh's number one thing he told Alex Smith is, your job is to take care of the ball. Under no circumstances do you turn the ball over. So he went from turning the ball over like crazy. You can go look at his stats on Pro Football Reference. His turnover percentage pre-Jim Harbaugh and after Jim Harbaugh are like league worst to historically good. So that is the kind of difference that Jim Harbaugh makes. He is just a great coach. He's good at getting guys to follow him. They all want to lay down in traffic for him. You've got guys like Justin Herbert and these defensive guys on the defensive line that are great. They've got a decent offensive line. And I don't know if you noticed the Chargers draft, all the receivers are 6'7". Why aren't these guys killing everybody that they play?
Yeah, it seems like Chargers are loaded with talent. I mean, they have plenty of talent to be able to compete right away. Be really interesting to see what he can do right off the rip. I mean, he's always been more of a ball control, like you said, avoiding turnovers, but they got a Ferrari at quarterback with Herbert, so we'll see how he meshes in with that. But super excited to see how they do. You'd think with what they have and bringing him in, they're going to have goals of competing for the AFC West right away.
Yeah, I don't see how they're not. I mean, we have a buddy in our betting group who's a big Michigan fan, and him and I were talking. Harbaugh, I call him a QB guru just because of the difference that he can turn somebody around. But, we was talking to our buddy. He hasn't really developed any NFL guys, which is true, but he made a good point. He's just a good coach, so he's going to get the most out of what is there. That's what I think you can rely on. If you're a Chargers fan, which I don't know any personally, you've got to be excited that you're going to get the most out of your team. Your team is not going to underachieve any longer. I think any NFL fan would be satisfied as long as you're not underachieving, and I don't think that they will with him. And I guess he's going to bring some of these guys with him from Michigan, and he's done it. He's also very meticulous about every part of the game. His special teams are always great. I think it's going to be very interesting to see how that goes in that AFC West. This is already a dogfight. It's going to be interesting to see. They're going to have 2 new head coaches there, permanent head coaches, and it's going to be fun to watch that division there.
Yeah, it was. I liked a lot that they brought Mentor, the defensive coordinator from Michigan. I'm a big college football fan. I watch a ton of Michigan, Ohio State, college football in general, and Mentor is a difference maker at defensive coordinator. Young guy from the Baltimore defensive tree lineage, and he's definitely an up and comer. So as an Ohio State fan, I was happy Mentor go ahead and moved on. Really happy that Harbaugh moved on to get him out of Michigan. They won the championship this year. Their recruiting classes the last few years, I mean, they're not bad, but they're nowhere near the level of Ohio State and Alabama. They're taking a lot more 3-star, low 4-star guys and building this roster. Super impressive with what he did at Michigan.
No doubt about it. He's just a winner. It did take him a while to kind of get to the point where they're competing for a national championship. But he wasn't getting the 5 stars, and we've talked about this in our group chat. It's a lot of 4 stars that if you get a team full of 4 stars, when I say full of them, like top to bottom, and you get them all in sync working together, and maybe you sprinkle in 1 or 2 5 stars here and there, and they all believe in each other. Their offensive line dominates, the defense plays well, you don't turn the ball over, you're going to have good things happen. It came through this season. So it'll be interesting to see how it works out. I'm glad that he didn't go to a team that I had to root against. So other than when we play them, which won't be for a couple of years personally. So that rounds out really the hires, the head coaching hires that we've seen here in the last week or so. There'll be some more coming up. I don't know. Are there any teams left for head coaches? There'll be more coming up that are, coordinators and whatnot, but I don't know of any NFL teams that now need a head coach.
Yeah, there's still a few. I know Washington. Okay. I think 1 or 2 other. There's definitely still a few out there where it is. Some of these are waiting for the teams to get eliminated in the playoffs to really grab them. Like McDonald for defense coordinator for Baltimore. He's a hot name. Of course, Ben Johnson. We've talked about him a few times. OC at Detroit. So still a few. Speaking of coaching searches, I know the Steelers and the Browns both still on the hunt looking for offensive coordinator positions. With Pittsburgh, a couple guys that I was hoping they would go after or hire was Kellen Moore. I've really been a big fan of him. LA Chargers OC last year, longtime OC for the Dallas Cowboys. I really like what he does as an offensive coordinator, but unfortunately, Philly hired him. It looks like that's where he's going, is Philly's going to hire him as an offensive coordinator, which in my opinion is a really good move for Philadelphia. They were also looking at the Rams QB coach, Zach Robinson. He's another one that's kind of a hot commodity, and Atlanta hired him. Actually, it looks like Morris picked him up to be the OC at Atlanta. So the only other name that's been mentioned with Pittsburgh really is Cliff Kingsbury, which I don't think they've interviewed him, but there's been some news that they want to. You'd think if he's willing to do it, to come down from a head coach to be an OC, you'd think he'd be an intriguing option.
Yeah. Kingsbury, like the guy as a head coach, I don't know. He's never really had that much success. I think he had, 1 good year in Arizona. His college career, he's got a losing record overall, and I think he has a losing record in the NFL as a head coach. But as an offensive coordinator, if he just focused on the offense, he's pretty creative. And he does sling the ball. He likes to score points, and he can get you a lot of yards. That doesn't sound like Pittsburgh at all. So that would be an interesting hire if they went that direction. I'd imagine if they were going internally for Pittsburgh anyway, they probably would have done it by now.
Yeah, it sounds like for sure they're looking outside. The 2 guys they had kind of co-offense coordinating last year after Canada left. It doesn't look like they're promoting them, which was really my worst fear, is to just do that. I really do hope they come out and bring up something different, like modernize the offense a little bit. They're just behind the times of what they want to do. Like, I know, they want to run the ball for sure. Like almost everybody wants to run the ball, but I totally agree. They need some new ideas, some fresh thoughts inside that building. So that's the only names I've really heard out of Pittsburgh. Cleveland, similarly, looking for an OC. They were also looking at Kellen Moore. They were probably disappointed he went to Philly. Another name both teams are actually looking for is the Houston quarterback coach, Jaron Johnson. I believe Pittsburgh interviewed him. Cleveland was looking at him. So Cleveland's search still wide open. It'd be interesting to see what these guys can come up with, especially Pittsburgh. I mean, they got to nail this hire. They got to get someone that's going to come in, take command of the offense, improve, figure out the QB situation. I think Cleveland's a little more safe. They have Stefanski who runs things a lot, but Pittsburgh's got to nail this offense coordinator hire.
Yeah, you'd think after the couple years of really sad offensive play with a good defense, you've got to do something now. And it's not like Pittsburgh to do anything rash or flashy, but maybe times are changing and maybe they'll change their ways and look for somebody new, because I see younger guys that got creative minds. Those are the guys that everybody in the NFL are going to. So who knows? We'll see what they do. I haven't heard much about Cleveland though, on who I don't know who they've interviewed or what they're going to do.
Yeah, it looks like I said Kellen Moore. I'm not sure who they interviewed, but at least with some interest was Kellen Moore, Jared Johnson from Houston, the QB coach, who I know Stroud came out and gave a big endorsement for him. Not sure if they've interviewed him or not yet, but he's still out there. He's still available. They interviewed Philly offensive coordinator from last year, Brian Johnson, who wouldn't be an exciting hire, depending, considering what they went through this year on offense. But both of them are still underway. So should get more news here in the next few weeks on that.
With Cleveland, I guess it's not as important considering because Stefanski is probably the guy calling the shots anyway. Yeah. So it's probably just kind of he's going to get somebody he likes and who he's going to be able to work under him. You got to imagine some of these guys are going to say, well, I want full control of the offense. And if you've got an offensive guy at head coach, he's probably not going to agree with that. So it might take a little bit longer for them. But those are two things we'll be monitoring. We'll be going over, and, hopefully next week before we preview the Super Bowl. So we just wanted to talk a little bit about the coaching changes that are happening and have happened and the hires that have been going around. Before we get to this week's games, we're going to talk about last week's games. And before doing so, I do have to mention 1-800-GAMBLER as a resource there. If you feel like you have a gambling problem and you need some help, please call 1-800-GAMBLER. So last week we went 1-1 in our system picks. Unfortunately, we were a failed 2-point conversion away from going 2-0, and even a missed taken field goal from going 2.0. There were 2-0. There were two plays in that Tampa-Detroit game that if they went our way, we go 2-0. But Mayfield and the receiver Mike Evans were just off a little bit. Either Mayfield needed to throw that 2-point conversion a little bit deeper, or Evans needed to stop and sell that pass interference more, but the refs didn't throw the flag. And then the field goal, he just shanked it. It just was a long field goal. Had it been a little bit shorter, it would have went, but it hooked left and missed there. So we did miss that Detroit-Tampa game, but I saw a lot of things in that game that kind of make me, I don't know, as a 49ers fan, happy, excited, because Tampa moved the ball really well in that game.
They did. Yeah, Tampa Bay had chances not only to cover, but to win the game. I mean, they were right there in the game in the second half. Detroit, I mean, they got weapons for sure. You can't really sleep on their offense. Got a lot of weapons. The kid Gibbs, anytime they get the ball in his hand, he's quick as can be. St. Brown, real good wide receiver. Defensively, though, they are not elite for sure. I mean, You'd have to think San Francisco is going to have some success. But, yeah, going back to that game, you and I were texting back and forth, had Tampa Bay, came down to 2-point conversion there at the end, and a little fade pass to Evans, incomplete. And that's the difference between cashing the bet and losing the bet. I mean, that's what it comes down to. Terrible coaching decision at the end of the game by Bowles. He actually had a timeout left after a turnover. Detroit had the ball. Got down to fourth down. They just kneeled it a few times, and Tampa didn't call their last timeout. They kneeled the final time with like 37 seconds on the clock, and Tampa didn't call their timeout and just let it run out. So it would have been Detroit would have been kicking. They were down 8. Detroit was up 8. So Detroit would have had to kick like a 50-yard field goal or punted, and you'd still had a long way to go, but it would give you a chance. You can't just give up and just not call timeout. The reporters asked him about it, and the answer he gave was even worse than the decision, really. Like, the game was over. We had no chance. Game was over. I'm not going to call my timeouts. What's the point? Like, man, just terrible decision in a playoff game.
If I'm that owner, that's a fireable offense, man. I mean, you're paid millions of dollars to win games and win games in the playoff more specifically. And to say we just didn't have a chance, what does that tell your locker room? First off, what does that tell the guys that play for you? Are they going to want to keep playing for a guy that said that in the playoff game that they lost, by a score? I don't understand it at all. There were a lot of people saying, "Oh, they made a mistake. They gave them an extra timeout that they didn't have." No, they didn't. Detroit took a timeout, but then there was a penalty flag. So for a second, they had 0, and then they give it back to them. So they did actually have the timeout. I mean, if you're Detroit, you're up 8. Are you going to try a 50-something yard field goal? No, you're going to punt the ball. So they would have punt the ball. And, if you're Detroit, you probably just fair catch it or, hope that it goes back out of the end zone. And you've got 30 seconds to try to get down the field. I don't know how it doesn't make any sense at all. I don't know why the guy would not try it. I don't know why the guy would brush it off like that. And I think it would be time to move on if I were an owner in Tampa.
It is pretty bad. We see bad coaching decisions, but that was brutal. Like when the game was happening, I was texting you like, why aren't they calling the timeout? The graphic must be wrong. They must not have any left. Like they should be using this timeout right now. Even after like the first kneel, the second kneel, at some point, like use it. You're obviously still going to have at least some time if you kneel it down. If you call the timeout after one of the kneels, and no, you kneel down with 35 seconds, let's go on the field. It's over. Like you got to be kidding me. I couldn't have that guy running my team. Really, if you're going to make that decision in a playoff game, just give up. And then at least after the game, just like say you made a mistake, say you didn't realize you had a timeout, something. Just no, we only had this much time. The game is over. It's just a waste of time. Like just horrible.
Yeah, didn't make any sense. And Tampa was close. Baker threw an interception on the first drive, but it wasn't his fault. I can't remember if it went off of a defender's hand. Something happened. If it was tipped. But he threw one late. That didn't help. But you still had a chance with 37 seconds left. I don't know that I'll ever understand that one. So we did take a loss there. But we did win the Kansas City-Buffalo game. We took Kansas City, was getting 3. They won outright. And the Bills continue to be the Bills in the playoffs. I don't know how else to put it.
Man, I don't know either. Like, what can they do to get over the hump? They got a stacked roster. Man, I don't know. I mean, it was a close game, of course. Could have went either way. They had the dreaded wide right field goal at the end. I mean, what are you going to do? I was looking, the TV ratings for last weekend were just through the roof. It was, fun games. It was the most watched divisional round as a group since 1988. That Buffalo-Kansas City game was the most watched division game ever, and it was the most watched TV program of any kind since the Super Bowl of last year. So NFL's doing real well right now. I mean, we bag on them sometimes for some of the stuff they do, but games are usually pretty fun here in the playoffs. And, yeah, ratings are just through the roof last week.
Yeah, and it was an entertaining game. Buffalo was at the end of the half. Didn't they they threw the ball. It was caught at the 1-yard line, and then time ran out. They should have probably at least kicked a field goal there. Am I remembering that right?
It was something along those lines, yeah.
Yeah, but, Kansas City was at the 1-yard line. And again, this is the third time that it's happened to us. A team we've bet on has fumbled at the 1-yard line out of the back of the end zone, gave it to the other team. We thought that was going to cost us a third cover, but thankfully we're 1-2 in games and not 0-3 where the team we bet on fumbles out of the back of the end zone and doesn't cover, but these guys did. They just played a better game. They were better prepared. Mahomes looked like Mahomes. The offense was clicking, better. The defense played really well, I thought. And, you take out Stephon Diggs, and that offense struggles.
Yeah, I mean, I really like Kincaid, the tight end, but your point is valid. They need a second receiver. They were without Gabe Davis, who's decent second receiver, but they got to add some more firepower on the outside for Allen. I would agree with that. Yeah, that fumble into the end zone. I mean, you and I talk about that all the time, the roll. I mean, I kind of understand they don't, they want to penalize someone from like reaching out for the goal line and it gets knocked out, but it's really harsh for that to get knocked out literally at the 1-inch line, fumble literally like 1 yard forward and out of bounds. And it's just a turnover. That's just sick. I know the Browns fans listening can remember that game in Kansas City in the playoffs that happened to them. Mm-hmm. You think they would change that rule or at least look into it. They probably have, but it seems really harsh to me to have a turnover in that situation.
And it's most assuredly going to be changed this offseason. Nobody likes it. It's just a very, unpopular rule, and it really doesn't make much logical sense because when you fumble it out of bounds, the offense keeps the ball no matter what. Why does it matter if you fumble it in the end zone? That part I don't get. So everybody's saying it's going to be changed. That'll be really, really different to see. You're not going to be penalized in the worst way possible for that. So it'll be next year ought to be, with the way they changed the way they were calling things this season. They didn't call as many pass interference. They called a lot more defensive holding. the pass interference calls have really slowed down scoring. This rule being changed will help scoring. It does not like it happens in every game, but it happens enough that it makes a difference. I don't know what they're going to do about the pass interference calling, because they went from one extreme to the other. They were calling it on you touch a guy, you're getting a call. And now you can almost mug a guy and nobody's throwing the flag. But that wasn't the case in San Francisco. Green Bay got 3 big calls to extend drives, and that was a very close game. We didn't have a play in that one, but we'll transition right to that game where San Francisco came away with a win. Green Bay covered. Everybody's saying that San Francisco should have lost that game, which, if things had just bounced Green Bay's way, San Francisco would have. But San Francisco made a ton of mistakes, including 3 pass interference penalties, one of which led to a touchdown. They gave up a very long kick return that led to 8 points. They slipped on 3 different plays in the grass at home in the rain. They didn't change their cleats. Green Bay did. San Francisco didn't. There were 3 big plays where guys were wide open because San Francisco defenders fell down. 49ers are lucky to come out of this, but it was only because of stupid mistakes of their own that game was even close. What did you see in that game?
Yeah, I'm impressed with Green Bay. They look pretty good. I mean, coming off the game against Dallas where they look good, got to give them some credit. They held the ball a ton early in the game, real long drives were just kept away from San Francisco. And you're right, like, how does the home team not be prepared for slipping with the cleats? You see it a lot in football. It's not just an isolated thing where the field's probably not going to be in the best condition. It had been raining. You'd think they'd test out a few different kind of cleats and try to get your best, your best footing, but it was a problem, especially early in the game. San Francisco's players, you've seen Green Bay slipping a little bit, but the 49ers particularly, they were sliding all over the place there for a while.
Yeah, I mean, how often are kickoffs even returned anymore, let alone taken inside the 20? You never see that. So you eliminate that. There's a touchdown off the board. I mean, there was at least 1 touchdown, if not 2, that were led because guys slipping. And then you've got the pass interference calls. Those are all things that are fixable. I really think the 49ers were the better team that day. They just should have lost because they were making so many mistakes. Yeah, but they did live to see another day, and they came through in the clutch. Brock Purdy led that last drive, and if not for a drop pass by George Kittle, he would have been perfect on the drive. But some of the receivers came up big there. Juwan Jennings had a really big 3rd and long catch. It might even have been 4th down. He had to jump, extend himself. He caught it, pulled it in, and he got hit and kept a hold of the ball. They did what they needed to do to win the game. So I really hope that they, as a 49ers fan, got all of that out of their system for this week, because Detroit is going to pull out all the stops.
Yeah, I was happy, really, or I would be in your shoes as a 49er fan, to see them have to battle in a close game and come from behind and win. I know there's some sort of stat on Shanahan where after they're down by so many at a certain time, he's like 0 for, and you're always kind of worried about that, where once they get behind, they just don't really have the type of offense or whatever it is to come from behind. So it was good. They was in a battle, neck and neck, pulled it out in the 4th quarter. That last drive by Purdy was good. It was good to see them come from behind and pull out a tough gut check win there.
Yeah, and that's exactly what it was. It was a gut check win. Kyle Shanahan is 0-33 or 38 when down by 8 points in the 4th quarter. But they show that stat all the time. Only 7% of teams come back down 8 in the 4th quarter. So they're 7% worse than average is really what that comes down to. So that looks a lot worse than it is. I mean, when you're down 8 in the 4th quarter, it's tough to come back from. Yeah. But down 5, they were 0-30. So there's definitely a trend going on there. It was nice to see him come through with that. But he's also dealt with some really bad quarterbacks because of injuries. Jimmy Garoppolo had been hurt so much over Shanahan's tenure that he had a lot of bad quarterbacks playing for him that had kept games close that probably shouldn't have been close just because he was a good coach. So I think that kind of led to some of the stats looking like it did. But 49ers came through, and we're going to get to that Detroit 49ers game after we finish up here with last week's game. So we were 1-1 in our system picks. We won the KC pick. We lost the Tampa pick. And Baltimore, Houston, our system did like that, but we didn't get a chance to cover that game. We were technically 2-1 on the weekend, but only 1-1 on the YSN picks. Baltimore just crushed Houston in that game.
Yeah, I mean, when we were on last Sunday, we talked about this game a little bit from the previous day. Close at the half, that punt return by Houston looked like it was going to be a game changer, put them right in the game. Thought, no, Baltimore might get tight a little bit here, might get a little nervous. All the pressure is on them, and that wasn't the case. They came out in the second half, just flexed their muscles, just whooped on Houston on both sides of the ball and showed why they're probably the Super Bowl favorites right now.
Yeah, I didn't get to watch the game. I was coaching that day, but I got a chance to look through the drive stats, which is something I really look through that tells the tale of the game, how a team scored in the drives. So it tells how far the drives were. Did they get a bunch of short drives because of mistakes by the other team? Did they get scores from special teams and defense? Houston got a score that way. Baltimore just dominated. They just had the ball. They went down the field. They scored. And Houston drives were absolutely pathetic in that game. 8 yards, 12 yards, 20 yards. Baltimore is firing on all cylinders. There's really not much to say about that game other than Houston was completely outclassed.
Yeah, Baltimore, it seems like every time they get in a pinch and they need to play, it's Jackson scrambling. I mean, newsflash, that's what so much of their success is. It's like They'll get them in 3rd and 6, or they'll get them in 12 or 2nd and 13, and Jackson scrambles for 11 or 12 yards. It's just almost unstoppable at times. We've talked about it before. Like, you got to spy at some point, even more than teams do. I'm sure that it's an emphasis, of course, but it seems like it doesn't matter at times, or he just scrambles, or they'll even do the design runs with him, and that's the backbreakers, where he can just run and pick up yards, and there's not a whole lot defense can do about it at times.
No, there isn't, and that's something that I'm sure that we're going to see today, because I bet Baltimore is going to be rocking. So before we head to these AFC, NFC conference championship games, our system picks, our best bets and teasers, I do have to say, if you feel like you have a gambling problem, 1-800-GAMBLER is there for you to provide resources to help. Okay, let's start with that Baltimore game. We're going to go to the AFC first. That's the first game of the day. I believe it's at 3 or 3:30 today here, coming up here real soon. The Baltimore Ravens are 4.5-point favorite over the defending Super Bowl champ, the Kansas City Chiefs. These teams haven't met in a couple years. I ran the numbers. The system likes Baltimore, even giving up 4.5, which it's moved to. It's moved a whole point. So right now, we're going to go officially with Baltimore. They do seem like the better team, and they do seem like they're not going to be stopped heading to the Super Bowl.
Yeah, I was surprised this number came out at 3.5. I thought KC wasn't getting enough respect, and then through the week, 4.5. I'm surprised, really, that KC is getting this many points. I was surprised that the system even liked Baltimore minus 4.5. The system's like KC all year, so it's really an indication that how much the system likes Baltimore. I mean, who can discount what they've done? Yeah. But looking into the numbers a little bit, I think it's just matchup-wise is really why this number is stretched from 3.5 to 4.5. KC's run defense, 31st in the league in success rate against the run. It's been a problem all year. It was a problem last week with Buffalo's run game. You know what Baltimore is going to want to do? They're going to line up and run the ball. It just seems like a poor matchup. On the other side of the ball is the same idea. Baltimore led the league in sacks. Kansas City's offensive line, always a little bit shaky. They just don't have the best offensive line right now. Their guard, Tooney, real good guard. He's going to be out today. Big loss for them. So, yeah, raw numbers, it looks like I think this line shouldn't be 4.5, but I think matchup-wise, so much of it just favors Baltimore. Home field advantage is going to be big. I think that's why we're seeing the system and even the sharps. I've heard the sharp play this week. Almost every sharp bettor is on Baltimore this week. Public, I think, would probably be a little bit more even, with KC, with Mahomes, but Baltimore minus 4.5 is a sharp play this week.
Yeah, and it's tough to really think that's a bad bet because Kansas City hasn't looked great. They looked good last week, but, if you look at that Buffalo team, they've underachieved this year. They've had some things not go their way. Don't get me wrong. They have not had any luck. The bounces have not went their way. But that Steelers game the week before was a lot closer than that score. And that Steelers team's playing, with a third string quarterback and an offense that just hasn't been able to do much of anything. And then if it wasn't for, I think two plays kind of is what made that game turn into a 10-plus point win for Buffalo. It was not a 10-plus point game. So, I mean, Buffalo they shouldn't have got as much respect as they did. And Kansas City was the better team, and they showed it. And Mahomes played a great game. They didn't make a lot of mistakes, and the receivers kind of stepped up for him.
Yeah, I mean, we liked KC in the game last week. It was close on who the better team is system-wise, but getting 3 points, I mean, I loved that bet last week with Kansas City. I felt real good about it. This week at Baltimore, I was looking up some numbers. Kansas City being a dog this week. It'll only be the 12th time ever that Mahomes has been an underdog, period. In those games, they're 8-3 straight up, and they're 9-1-1 against the spread.
Oh,
so,
man.
They're playing up that angle. Like, we're the defending Super Bowl champs.
Right.
We're this big underdogs. This is absurd. Honestly, for me, it doesn't feel great betting against Mahomes. All the intangibles are on Kansas City's side. They got the experience. They got the coach with the experience. They got the better QB. I mean, Jackson's good, but everybody would rather have Mahomes. Baltimore, is for as good as their franchise is, and as much success as they had, this is their first AFC title game appearance since 2012 when they won the Super Bowl. So this is a big game for Baltimore and their franchise, playing at home as favorites. I think KC will give them a run, but I think Baltimore probably just has a little too much. Their run game is just going to be too much. Mahomes will get his, but I think Baltimore's run game is going to have a field day and just going to outscore KC.
Yeah, I'm sure it will be close for a while. And, I was thinking about this game in Baltimore specifically. You can catch Baltimore sleepwalking. They've done this year after year. I don't know what it is about Harbaugh. You see a lot of times they'll play a team that they're a lot better than. Usually they'll blow them out. But once in a while, they'll just kind of not play up to their potential, and they'll lose a game that they shouldn't. They went to overtime with the Rams. They should not have went to overtime with that Rams team. The Rams played great and damn near won the game. They lost to Pittsburgh this year in a game where they dropped 8 passes. I don't know what it is about them that makes them sleepwalk sometimes, but you don't see them do that in big games. You never see this Baltimore team with Harbaugh as the coach fall asleep at the wheel in a big game. They seem to show up for the big games. And they don't always win them, but they're always there. They're not going to get caught sleepwalking. And there's no way they're not going to be crawling out of their skin to win this game today.
Yeah, I think we can discount sleepwalking for sure. Playing the defending champs at home, AFC title game. I mean, you're right. Some of the Baltimore weakness does come from where they lost. Like, they lost to Indy this year, didn't they, at home?
Right.
Like, sometimes they'll just have some sleepers, and they don't look great. But overall, I mean, first-ranked defense in the league, points per game, tons of turnovers forced, led the league in sacks. Another little key stat I saw was KC is like by far the worst team in the league at preventing QB runs, like QB yardage against running the ball the last few years are like by far the worst for whatever reason. You'd think that shouldn't be like a huge stat, but the margin of where they were compared to the second-ranked team was stark. So, like I was saying against the Houston game, every time Baltimore got behind the sticks, every time they needed to play, Houston looked like they're going to get a stop. It was just Jackson running. I mean, it just kills them. KC's got to figure something out. Of course, it's going to be primary in their minds of what to do with Spagnuolo. How the heck can they stop Jackson from running around and killing him?
Yeah, that's what I mean. That's what everybody tries to do every week, but it's just not an easy thing to do. I don't know. What do you do to stop it? I mean, if you have to respect his arm. A lot of times with guys like that, they don't have the arm to back it up. They rely on their legs, but he's got to, if you were to take his legs out and give him the legs of Jared Goff, I think he'd still be a starter in the league. And because he's an adequate thrower of the ball, he could still throw the ball well. Don't get me wrong. The threat of the run opens up a ton for them, but he's not a horrible passer. His accuracy isn't really bad. He doesn't have acrobatic receivers. He still gets the job done there. So when you have to respect the quarterback running the ball and you have to be on edge waiting for that to happen, it's going to open up things. And if you're out there trying to stop the pass and you can't dedicate another guy to spy on him, who he'll outrun anyway, really, what do you do to stop the guy? Get pressure up the middle? I mean, really have dominant interior defense. Have 3 Aaron Donalds on the team is basically what you need to do.
That would be ideal if you could just have 3 guys interior that just put pressure right up the middle and collapse the pocket, but easier said than done. And yeah, you're spot on. A lot of it is he's improved a lot as a passer. I would say a few years ago, even like his MVP season, his passing, it's come a long way. It really has. I liked the hiring at the time, and it's proved to be true of the offensive coordinator there from Georgia. Great hire for them. Offense it's just more robust this year. We also haven't talked about they're getting Mark Andrews back today, tight end, all pro level tight end. I mean, he's his security blanket. I heard they're going to run a lot of 2 tight end sets with Likely and Andrews together. So also getting Marlon Humphrey back, cornerback. I mean, he's a Pro Bowl level guy. He's going to be back today. So Baltimore's healthy, loaded. Yeah, I mean, it's hard to see Kansas City's defense as good as they are. They just don't match up well. It's just hard to see them having consistent success stopping them. But as far as betting Baltimore, I mean, in your eyes, like what would worry you? What do you think? How can you see a path for KC to not only cover but win this game?
Well, I mean, it'd be the same things that have cost Baltimore this season. Is Kansas City going to be able to do Kansas City things? Are you going to let Mahomes run around and find somebody open deep? That's where Kansas City kills you, where you take away the routes. Okay, he can run. He can run with the ball. He's mobile, but he's really good at being in the pocket and avoiding sacks and then finding guys. That's where he'll kill you. Jackson will kill you. You cover the routes well. He's just going to take off running. Mahomes kills you. You stop the routes. His guys know to not give up on a play. His guys know to keep running. So if you got some pressure in, he's moving in the pocket. He finds somebody for 40 yards. Boom, down the field. That's where he could kill you. That could happen. Outside of that, I mean, other than having things like their receivers dropping balls, which they're known to do, he does not have a great receiving core. He's supposed to get Mark Andrews back today. I don't know if he's playing or not. I haven't seen. Yeah, if you take those guys out, either they're making mistakes or you're just taking them out of the plays. Kansas City does have a good defense. They have a good pass defense. You could see a path if they can get the passing game stopped for Baltimore, and then they can make some plays, unscripted plays. I could see it happening.
Yeah, KC, job number 1, they got to do whatever they got to do to limit the run game. They can't just get gashed for 7 or 8 yards constantly. It's kind of the key to stopping Baltimore. You got to get them in 3rd and long. I mean, that's a lot of offenses, but Baltimore especially. If you can get them in 3rd and 8 or 9, hope Jackson don't beat you scrambling for them 8 or 9 yards. Make them pass the ball. They do have some weapons. I like Flowers a lot. He was a good pick for them. Quick little slot receiver. Got old man Beckham, who's, up there in age, but still pretty reliable. They just got a lot of weapons they can go to. So even if you stop this or that, they got different weapons they can go to.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see what happens. If the 49ers get to the Super Bowl, they will have a rematch with one of their 2 Super Bowl losses. So we'll see what happens there. So we're officially going to take the Baltimore Ravens -4.5. That's a system play. Lock it in. And we'll head to the last game here tonight. That is the Detroit Lions at the San Francisco 49ers. San Francisco is a 7-point favorite. Before I get to any of my thoughts, Jim, why don't you give us some of your thoughts? Tell us what you think, what you see happening today.
Yeah, San Francisco, from what I hear, is the sharp side. That's where the sharp money's coming in on San Fran -7. Makes sense to me. I was surprised this line was as low as it is. Detroit's a good team. They're a good team, but San Fran is just on another level. I know they didn't play great last week. Green Bay gave them a run, but just in general, if San Francisco plays their best, Detroit plays their best, San Francisco is going to win this game fairly easily, in my opinion. You got Detroit injuries. The center, Ragnow, good center, got hurt. He's going to play, but it's looked like well less than 100%. I mean, he was questionable to even play or not. Saw Detroit signed old Zach Ertz this week, tight end, coming off the street to try to help him out. Looks like they're actually going to have him in some packages, going to play a little bit. I know Debo getting hurt last week. 49ers fans were worried that he wasn't going to be able to play. He's a big part of their offense. He's looking good to go. Might be limited a little bit, but he's going to give it a shot. So we'll see. Last week I was really impressed, and I have been impressed with the Lions offensive coordinator, Johnson. I love the way he mixes up the runs and the pass. Does tons of play action, which is Goff's bread and butter. Back to his Rams days, he's just real good at play action. They use it a ton. They mix it up well, gets the ball to the weapon. So I said before, I can see why he's a hot head coach candidate to be hired. Good weapons, but just overall, San Francisco just seems like the all-around better team. So what are your thoughts on the game today?
I really think it's going to be won or lost in the trenches. It's either going to be the 49ers offense being able to contain the pass rush and move the ball. The Lions secondary is not good at all. They have to take advantage there, but they have to be able to block. And Colton McKivitz, the right tackle for the 49ers, has got the job of stopping one of the best pass rushers in the NFC, Aiden Hutchinson. They have to be able to do that no matter what. They can't get a bunch of pressure on Purdy. He has to play in rhythm. He's good outside of script, but his worst games come from that also. I mean, just like all quarterbacks, but once in a while, if he starts bad, he's getting pressure. It seems like it's a snowball effect. So they got to keep him clean. And then on defense, the 49ers are going to have to get some pressure on Goff. Goff is he's not a mobile guy at all. He doesn't do well when the pressure is in his face. Like you said, Ragnow's hurt. Their starting left guard is out, and their best pass blocking tight end is also out for this game. I don't see how Ragnow's 100%. He's one of the best centers in the game, if not the best center, but he sprained his ankle and his knee, and he did not practice all week long. So the interior guys for the 49ers, Eric Armstead, Javon Kinlaw, all them guys have to get pressure on the inside, get to Goff. And they've got to be ready for anything as well, because Detroit's not going to hold back. I mean, they're going to have trick plays. They're going to have fake punts, I bet. They're going to go for it on fourth down in their own territory, because what do they have to lose, at this point? San Francisco's got to play with their head on a swivel. And I hope Kyle Shanahan has some kind of a game plan that isn't 100% focused on Debo. I don't know what it is about these guys. They lose their minds when Debo's not in there. To me, Debo he's a little bit, I don't know how to say it. He's not tough when he's hurting. He doesn't play hurt well. They did the x-rays and whatnot on him and didn't have anything wrong with him. Why'd he come out of the game? I mean, you're going to feel a sting, man. You're in the NFL and you're a $70 million receiver. You're going to feel a sting. Get back in the game. I mean, come on, dude. Suck it up. Get out there. And you dang near lost. I can imagine he's probably going to be out there 100% today. But who knows? He gets hit hard and he wants to come out. I hope Kyle Shanahan's got something else in the mix here.
Yeah, you would think so. It's kind of surprising that, Samuel, you would say that. I mean, I can see what you're saying, but, he plays running back at times, and the way he runs is physical. He runs for a wide receiver. He definitely has a physical brand of football and running with it. Hope he's well enough, Hope he ain't out there and just kind of not 100%, but they're still going to force feed on the ball. You just never know with some of these injuries, like how much is it really going to impact things. It's not like San Francisco doesn't have other weapons to go to. They're CMC-centric offense for sure. Got Kittle. I love Ayuk. Talk about it all the time. I think he's way underrated as a wide receiver in the NFL. So what about I know, like, if I ask you what worries you the most, it's going to be San Francisco offensive line. That's usually what you say, the pass protection, the offensive line. But outside of that, what worries you? And specifically with, like, the San Francisco defense, if you're the defensive or the offensive coordinator for Detroit, you're Ben Johnson, what would be your game plan to attack the San Francisco defense?
Be those outside zone runs. Last week everybody said Green Bay ran all over San Francisco. No, they didn't. They had just over 100 yards rushing, but 53 of them came on one play. But it was one of those outside zone runs. It might have even been a pitch. I can't remember off the top of my head what it was. But they are susceptible to giving up big runs from that, from the runs on the outside. The defensive ends have got to contain Bosa and Chase Young have got to play disciplined on the outside. Bosa's known for not doing that. He's known for just going all out to get pressure on the quarterback, which is great most of the time. But if there's a path to get the ball moving on offense for the Lions, that's it. They're going to have to block well. But I would just be they got two capable running backs. I'd be focusing on the run here, and I would not want to put the game in Jared Goff's hands. He's played well, but he can also lose his mind and throw four interceptions too. So maybe taking the ball out of his hands early, running the ball, going outside. And I would take advantage of the head coach being a gunslinger, being a gambler. Hey, can we throw some trick plays in here? Because the 49ers are playing with a safety that was Logan Ryan. He wasn't even in the NFL a couple weeks ago, about 5 weeks ago, and they signed him. They decided to start him over Jair Brown. Brown is a rookie from Penn State who came in when Hufanga got hurt and out for the season. That's who they're going with. Logan Ryan is, for whatever reason, is playing. I saw what Shanahan said. He said Brown had missed a couple weeks. He's a rookie, and he felt like it wouldn't be fair to him to put him in a playoff game with that much riding on when he hasn't had practice, and Ryan is a two-time Super Bowl champ. I hope that Brown's playing today because Logan Ryan sucked last week.
Yeah. I noticed at times, I can't remember who it was, but there was someone in the secondary that usually isn't there, doesn't play a lot, that was gotten getting picked on and had a few interference penalties. You would think that Detroit's definitely going to try to run the ball. I mean, that's kind of what they do. They do, like you said, outside zone, a lot of stretch, and then play action. That's, like I said, Goff's bread and butter. He's always been so much better out of play action. And you're right, their head coach is aggressive. He's going to go for it on fourth down. He goes for two. I have no doubt that they're going to pull out all the stops as 7-point underdogs here today to do what they can. I mean, without saying, it's just a massive game for Detroit's franchise. If they could actually win this game and get to the Super Bowl, I mean, that would be a pretty crazy story for them.
Yeah, and, the 49ers are the better team. If we're looking top to bottom, come on, they are. But
no doubt.
They haven't been playing great lately, so we are officially taking 49ers -7. The system likes them. That's where we're at. The game will be coming up here in about 4 hours. So those are our two picks. Baltimore -4.5, San Francisco -7. We're going chalk today. But, Bailey, you've got some other bets for us. You've looked through things. Tell us, do you have a best bet and a teaser for us? What do you got for us today?
Yeah, I know we going favorites, but it's been a favorites kind of year. Favorites have done very well this year against the spread compared to most years. So we've been on a lot of favorites too. Usually the system is very dog heavy. We go dogs way more often, but it seems like the Vegas line makers are kind of adjusting the odds a little bit this year, where it's been a favorites year. It might be just small sample, might be just a run of luck, but for whatever reason, favorites have done very well this year. So best bet, we're going to go with San Francisco -7. Just going to follow the system. I think this line should be a little bit higher than it is. I think it's a little bit too much recency bias with San Francisco struggling last week against Green Bay. Detroit's a good team for sure. They're a much better team at home in the Dome. Now they're going on the road to San Francisco. I think this line is definitely short. I would make San Francisco a few more points higher than what they are. So go to back to system, go San Francisco for our best bet. Tease, I'm just going to make it simple and just tease the two system picks as well. I definitely agree with San Francisco -1 with the 6-point teaser. I think that's a great bet. You basically just need San Fran to win by 1. So I love that pick. I mean, I love San Francisco -1. The other game, I was kind of back and forth, Baltimore, KC. I'm a little more leery of betting Baltimore -4.5, laying this many points. I mean, honestly, it wouldn't totally shock me if KC just does their magic Mahomes and Reed and just figures out a way to win. But for us teaser pick this week, we're just going to roll with Baltimore. They're -4.5. You take that down 6 points, they would be +1.5. So you get 1.5 points. So it's going to be our tease of the week. Baltimore 1.5, San Francisco -1. Best bet, San Francisco -7.
All right. So on the season, we are 19-16 with our system picks. Those are just single game bets. 5-3 in teasers and 4-4 with best bets. So we're 500 or better in everything. Let's hope that continues this weekend. So we just want to thank everybody for tuning in. We'll be back in 2 weeks for a Super Bowl show. In the interim, I don't know. We'll have to see how things go. Maybe there'll be some more coaching hires and whatnot we could talk about maybe next weekend. But we'll be for sure back in 2 weeks for the Super Bowl. So for Jim Bailey, I'm Gary Altizer. Thanks for tuning in to YSN here, Cherry Pickers episode 10. Can't believe it's here already. We'll be back in 2 weeks for sure. Thanks for coming and hanging out with us. We'll see you then.